Joining us, policy editor of The Bulwark, Mona Charen, opinion columnist at The New York Times, David French, and host of the Independent Americans podcast and founder and CEO of Independent Veterans of America, Paul Rieckhoff. David, first to you. What do you make of this alleged census data regarding the voter rolls?
Let's just say I'm looking at it with extreme skepticism. I mean, look, when we're talking about non-citizens voting, this should be an easy issue to talk about because, number one, if non-citizens are on the voter rolls, they should not be there. We should remove non-citizens from the voter rolls. However, the problem of non-citizen voting is microscopic. It has not been documented in any rigorous way to matter at all. Instead, it's a rounding error on a rounding error on a rounding error. And a lot of the emphasis on it, quite frankly, is still related all the way back to this 2020 obsession, where the Trump world is still looking for something, anything that they can find to say that the 2020 election was illegitimate. So we should be concerned if non-citizens pop up on voter rolls. They should be removed. But Americans need to know that in the scheme of American elections, the problem of non-citizen voting is not even close to material. It is not even anything. It is not something that people should worry about when they go to the polls. This is an effort to try to generate fear. It is not an effort to address a real and truly substantial problem.
Does the fear get generated, Mona? Is it effective?
Well, sure. He has been able, single-handedly, really, to undermine confidence in our electoral system. He's been doing it now for a very long time. He started in 2016 when he lost the Iowa caucuses and claimed that it had been rigged. He can never lose. He can only be cheated. And because of his very bizarre psychology and his personal problems. And so, but he has been able to translate his psychological difficulties into a severe political problem for the country because he's been able to persuade tens of millions of our fellow citizens that there is something corrupt, that there is something wrong about the way we vote. And it doesn't matter how clownish it gets. Let's not forget that after the 2020 election, the state of Arizona hired a firm called the Cyber Ninjas to do a recount. This was after the state had done its own recount, and they painstakingly went through it. And there were people searching for bamboo, and I mean, you know, you cannot overstate the craziness, and yet they did not find that election had been in any way illegitimate. In fact, I think they wound up finding a few more votes for Joe Biden than Trump was claiming. And so, yes, I mean, it is both clownish and frightening because it's so absurd, it's so wrong, it's such a lie, and yet, yeah, millions of people do believe in it, and that undermines faith in our entire system.
Do we do ourselves a disservice? I was just talking about this with McKay Coppins. By focusing on it so much, do we add to the doubt out there, or to the doubt that the next election will happen smoothly if we are warning that Donald Trump might try to take it away?
I don't think we're focusing on it enough because Donald Trump is trying to take it away. It is his number one strategic priority because it's the number one strategic threat to his power. He knows that free and fair elections are going to be a circuit breaker against him, and he's going to do everything he can to stop it. He's telegraphed that punch, and this is just the latest phase in a strategic plan to attack our elections. He's putting it all out there in the open. It doesn't have to be true. He's going to keep throwing it at the wall. He's going to focus on Arizona and Georgia and Pennsylvania. He's going to attack write-in voting while he write-in votes this week, right, into Florida. He's the total hypocrite on that regard, but he's made it very clear, and I think it is the number one threat to our democracy. Everybody is talking so much about the election. You can't talk about the election without this focused strategy from the White House and all elements to stop it from happening.
Do you worry that some of the people that they're claiming that are on these voter rolls that should not be on these voter rolls, that it's a mistake, and perhaps you end up disenfranchising people who are, in fact, legally voters, David?
Well, I'm very concerned that in the quest to purge voter rolls of disqualified or unqualified voters, that you are going to purge legitimate voters. I don't think there's any question that this administration at best is sloppy, at best, and at worst is actively corrupt. So I don't trust them with voter rolls. I think states have been right to try to keep their voter rolls to themselves. This is not an administration that can be trusted. And I want to go back to something earlier. One thing that's important to understand about how the right-wing media and begins to change culture in the United States is through sheer repetition. So you will hear something that sounds nuts, like a lot of the anti-vaccine rhetoric that we've heard for years from the right, or you hear something that sounds nuts, like the election conspiracy theories of 2020, but they just keep going and going and going and saying it and saying it and saying it until it seeps into the public consciousness. That's why you have to confront it. You have to deal with it in real time, and you have to be every bit as relentless in rebutting the lie as the Trump world is in telling the lie.
Yeah, but here's the problem. You can have us relentlessly push back on it, as we have been doing, all three of us now, for many years, and other media outlets. But when you don't have the rest of the established government authority figures in place doing it as well, you become a part of the problem. I mean, if you don't have Republicans in Congress willing, Mona, to stand up to the president and say, you can't do this to our democracy, it's not good long term. You're lying about our voting, our election systems. You're lying in service of yourself, and you're damaging our republic for it. Without them, it is very hard to fully and adequately push back against somebody who is sitting in the White House.
Well, Katie, I'm not going to disagree that that would be the healthiest possible thing that could happen for our democracy, would be for fellow Republicans to say this is dangerous, this crosses a very important line, and we will not be silent about it. And that would be fantastic, and it might even reach the hardcore MAGA audience. But I think we have to be realistic that it's not going to happen. After 10 years, we can see the party has been completely cowed. But one thing that I do think, in addition to saying, what he said about the past election was false, what he has said about 2020 was a lie, without, constantly repeating that, though I'm not against repeating it. But the other important thing to do is to telegraph the punches, to be out in front of it, to think about what's going to happen in the midterms, to think about what's going to happen in 2028, and to say they are going to be challenging the results in the following fashion. Be ready for it. Here's what you can expect. And when you do it that way, you arm people. And then when they fall into that predictable trap, they can be exposed.
Let's bring in Vaughn Hilliard, our senior White House reporter, who's got some new reporting on this very subject. Vaughn, as we talk about what Donald Trump might try to do, there are currently Democratic officials and Republican officials across this country who are wargaming what they need to do to stop Donald Trump from trying to steal the next election. What can you tell us?
Right. And this is I think the contradiction that we must point out based on conversations with state election administrators and local administrators here is this focus so heavily by the Trump administration, the Department of Homeland Security, to get these voter rolls and make the case to the American public that there's a mass number of non-citizens voting. Well, on one hand, while they are putting that out, the Department of Homeland Security also oversees CISA, which is in charge of cybersecurity threats here in the homeland. And they gutted the election experts that worked under CISA, that worked with the state in these localities to ensure that election machines, tabulating machines, for example, were secure from cyber attacks, either domestic or foreign ones. And in conversations that we had with these Democratic and Republican election administrators, they make it very clear that there are no election experts in CISA to even work directly with right now. And in the case of one state, I was on the phone last night with the Nevada Secretary of State, Cisco Aguilar, who told me, well, CISA hasn't even reached out to the state of Nevada, which has major midterm elections for statewide races, and that they're not in touch 2.5 months out. And so if the Department of Homeland Security is truly concerned about the integrity of the elections, then why are they not addressing the very issue that Donald Trump in his primetime address month ago, in which he focused so heavily on the vulnerability of elections machines. Why are they not focused on that instead of pushing this out? And when it comes to the non-citizen voting, Katie, it's the fact that they haven't been transparent. The administration hasn't provided to media organizations or to the states the complete data sets of these, the idea of who these non-citizen voters are. And it has really made it difficult for the state election administrators to make the case to the public that they are, in fact, addressing this, while also the president of the United States is saying that they're not. And it puts them in that tough bind. And that is really part of the concern about what this Trump administration could try to do in November to justify further actions.